to visit us every now and then, and he's got a very special thing to tell you about, hoping to pick your brain, and then he will turn the time over to Don for our Brown Bag Lunch Christmas program. So, praise God.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. I just have a short little talk presentation here, and I'll start it with the fact that I brought down a Christmas tree. And you can see it lit up over there against the wall. And that was a Christmas tree put together by my sister-in-law. When my mother passed away, that was the jewelry that was in her jewelry box from who knows where it came from, because Mom didn't wear much jewelry in her life. But I'm sure there's collections in there from Lost Nation, DeWitt, Makokata, and it turned out to be pretty special at Christmas time. We were able to bring that down and share it with you today. So today's story that's related to Jackson County is the fact that I grew up again south of Baldwin in Eden Valley. And when I was just a small toddler, school age, elementary school, Dad and Mom talked about the fact that there was a Christmas display on top of Eden Valley, the trees of Eden Valley. And I'm here to tell you that story. So I came across the Lost Nation newspaper, and the lights on Bear Creek are every evening. This is December 24th, 1959. And the Christmas light display at Arnold Wulf's Bear Creek acreage will be on every evening from 6 until 10 until after New Year's Day. The 25 pieces require about 1,000 bulbs and extend along the bluffs for nearly a third of a mile. And that was the only little clipping I could find to share with you today to start the story. And Arnold Wulf's mother was a Bach, which is from all the Bach family that lives in Baldwin. I came across the story written in 2001 in the Cedar Rapids Gazette newspaper, and I'm going to read parts of this here. Eden Valley is a magical hideaway, one of those places you're drawn back to, no matter how long you've been away. The little county park nestles in the southwest corner of Jackson County, a place of silent bluffs and forested uplands waiting to be explored. We drove through the Eden Valley on our way back home from important appointments, caught up in a hurry of the holidays. We'd been in the car for about 2 hours, and this spot was perfect for a much-needed leg stretching. You see, I grew up near this park and had hunted and played in the ancient limestone-walled valley long before it was designated a public land. My friends and I played cowboys and Indians back in the narrow canyon beyond the fortress ridge of stealthy 10-year-old Herkings among the crevices and old oak trees. There's a swinging bridge back over the creek now, and refurbished campgrounds are available where wild young adventurers once roamed free. Among my fondest memories of Eden Valley are the Christmas time drives when my parents to see a display unlike any you're likely to find these days. The land originally belonged to a kind old gentleman named Arnold Wulf. He constructed tall wooden frames on top of the 100-foot bluffs and strong electric lines along the ridge. It was hard work and the gift to our little farm community every holiday season. We would pile into the car and drive down the winding gravel road to see giant stars and ornaments high above us on the forested hilltops. The lights shone against the backdrop of the winter evening skies, and we would stop a while to sit, drinking hot chocolate my mother had made for the trip. In the silence, the darkened valley seemed seem to glow softly with the faint colors of Christmas. Memories are important things, though I guess we all reminisce about the peace and freedoms we've always taken so granted for in this country. After all, until recent, we hoped America would never be involved in another war. That was the article I found in the Cedar Rapids paper. Thank you.
It was a beautiful display. We used to go there. My mom grew up south of Baldwin also, and so we always went to that.
Those are the comments that we're trying to find, because next year at this time, we hope we can find pictures and more stories of people who can reminisce about those days when Arnold was so talented to put those treetops together.
Diane Henry said her dad, who was a Bach, he helped set it up for him too.
So we've got people available to help explain this wonderful Christmas story. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I was going to do this dressed as Santa Claus, but 5 people have paid me $100 not to. So today's program is entitled The Jackson County Christmas. Elements of this are by request. And there's a few people that I have to thank, because you never do anything like this alone. And of course, the people that I want to thank, some of them are not here today, so they'll have to see it on YouTube. There are a lot of images that are quintessential for the traditional Christmas in the U.S. and much of Europe, but there are also other images as well, more personal images that form memories of this iconic holiday. This is a sketch of a pioneer cabin from the palimpsest in 1946. It's pretty accurate. While you're sitting there, just imagine that this is where you're going to be spending Christmas this year. For many of us, some of the most precious memories of Christmas are those of our ancestors who celebrated the season here in the time when it was the frontier. These days, when the value of a gift is measured by how much it cost, stories of simpler pleasures from our collective past are refreshing. Mary Ann Swaney, in 1884, recalled her family's first Christmas in Van Buren Township, Jackson County, Iowa, in 1838. And this is an 1867 map of the area. And the Van Deventer property is right here. So this is where this would have taken place, just east of Spragueville. Our first party, or Christmas ball, as we will always remember, Mr. Van Deventer, living some 3 miles from us, had the largest log house for miles around and situated near the Maquoketa River, at which place it was agreed upon to have the party. Then the men set a date just before Christmas on which to have a general hunt for turkeys and prairie chickens to be dressed and brought along for our suppers. Do you remember that, Roger? Were you on it? A couple of them? Okay. Mrs. Van Deventer had a large kettle for holding 10 or 12 pails full of water, which was used put into use soon after we all arrived. The chickens were all cut up, and with a few potatoes and turnips were put into the cooking, while the only turkey captured was suspended over the fireplace over a dripping pan to catch the gravy. and while supper was cooking, all joined in the dance. A young man by the name of Westbrook, who had just come to the neighborhood, brought a violin, and as some of our boys were musicians, each took his turn playing, and all went along merrily. But as the stew and the turkey were about done, we had to clear the center of the room, and with benches and boards made a table, and soon our supper was announced. And standing around the table, we just more than enjoyed the feast. Now, think of that compared to your own Christmas celebrations, the food that you guys have today and that we all have today compared to chickens, turnips cut up in a pot, and a turkey hanging over a fire, and they thought that was a feast. If you want to see how much your family loves you, try it this year and see how much. Our chicken stew and cornmeal was relished, equal to the best meal that could be set before a queen, and we all enjoyed it, being all on an equality. Our dressing room was a root house made to keep vegetables through the winter, where we ladies repaired to change our dresses after clearing the table and washing the dishes. We continued dancing until nearly daylight. The larger portion of our party was composed of young married people. We had one young lady with us who lived some 12 miles away, escorted by L.B. Walker, who went for her with the Knox team, making the round trip and taking in the dance in the short space of 3 days. There were several young men who would have been glad to have brought ladies, but there were none to bring. At that time, here in Jackson County, there were 7 marriageable age young men, that means age 21 and older, for every marriageable age female, which was 14 or older with their parents' consent. This isn't an actual picture from the dance. Charlie Wyckoff, one of our county's early pioneers and prominent historians, reminisced about early Christmases he reminisced in 1910 about the early Christmases. He came here as a 6-month-old baby in 1836. And I think, Barb, were you along on that trip?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. As the season of the year notifies me of the near approach of Christmas, and not being busy, I thought I would write a few lines either for the Gazette or the Wastebasket, which I will leave to the editor to decide. And my mind runs back to Christmas time in the old neighborhood 60 years ago, the busy times at the Wyckoff home, a part of which was built for merrymaking on Christmas and other holidays. My revered father, R.B. Wyckoff, in building a kitchen, which he needed, concluded to make one that would answer 2 purposes. So he built it 16 feet by 36 feet and put in a swinging partition so that when he wished he could make it into a dance hall. The partition was swung up against the wall and it made a hall 16 feet wide by 36 feet long, which at the time was the most elaborate hall in the country. As I look back to my boyhood days, I can see the kind old mother with the shelves with her sleeves rolled up, mixing material for all those famous mincemeat pies which only mothers can make. Besides the gingerbread and the fried cakes that tasted so good to me. And as I write, it seems to me that although she's been dead 50 years, I can hear her say, "Now Charlie, don't touch those pies or that gingerbread or those fried cakes. They are for Christmas." Well now, if you will be a good boy and split those dry rails, so when your father comes, he can build a fire in the oven. I have 25 more pies ready to bake, and I will give you a cake and a piece of gingerbread. The oven spoken of was built of brick and arched up on the top with an iron door. This was heated by filling it full of wood, and when the wood had been burnt down, the ashes and coals were taken out, and what was to be baked was put in, much the same way as the wood-fired pizza ovens of today work. Mother could bake 25 pies in one heating. How many of you can do that? Okay, how many of you want to do that? I have counted 200 mincemeat pies on the pantry shelves at one time. At the time of which I am writing, the company did not wait until 8 or 9 o'clock to come, but commenced coming in the afternoon, often as early as 3 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, supper was commenced, and tables had to be set in the dance hall, as fast as people came, they were served, and it was expected that all would be through with supper and the hall cleared up and ready to do something, ready to commence dancing by 6 o'clock. Should anyone come in late, they had to eat supper in a small place. I'm not sure what that means, but I don't think it would be comfortable. After the hall was cleared, the music was generally furnished by Robert Westbrook and John Scarborough. And there was the old tin candlesticks that used to hang beside the wall to hold the tallow made from deer's tallow and hog lard. There was no Standard Oil in those days, and none of your whirl around and stand 'em up and squeeze 'em dances. Roger, were those your kind of dances? Do you want to
the powwows, I didn't go there.
So, you don't want to demonstrate?
No,
All right. It was quadrilles by the early settlers that my father was quite a singer and would often entertain the company with a song. Usually while the dance was a money musk or a Virginia reel. John Scarborough would also tell an amusing story. This is also not from 1836. The mince pies in the neighborhood and the cakes were set on the pantry shelves, and everyone helped themselves throughout the night. Those from Sevilla and other distant points often stayed until after breakfast. If snow was on the ground, they came in sleds. If not, they came in wagons with a board across the box for seats or sat on the bottom, and often came with ox teams. I don't remember any trouble at those dances, nor anyone having too much to drink, although on a little stand in a decanter filled with Billy Hahn's best, free to all who wished it. But right here, permit me to say that at that time there were no such things as saloons. In every trading post, either in the back room or the cellar, there was a keg on tap, free to all. And further, most of the young people belonged to some kind of temperance society. This is a picture of Charlie Wyckoff, who's the gentleman with the big beard in the middle, and his wife and their children on their 50th anniversary. But just one more thought, as I am an old man whose sand is almost run out, and go back with me 60 years ago to the old swinging bed and help me raise those warm bedclothes made from wool spun by those busy hands of mother, and help me raise my head on cold Christmas mornings and behold the row of stockings knit by those same fingers hanging around the mantel shelf of the old fireplace, and see those happy faces as we pile out of our bed and eagerly take down the little tokens left us by the man who came down the chimney. And together let us thank God that our lot has been cast in a Christian land, and that when He calls, we shall meet that good old mother in the happy land. Of course, happy land. Of course, there are more contemporary memories, too. There are chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Santa Claus keeping track of the good boys and the bad boys, good children and little children, carolers, folks dressed up like Eskimos, And here's one maybe most of you will remember, or some of you will. Before Christmas, we would go out and pick out a tree, and that was always a big deal. We always looked forward to that. Uncle D would get his tractor and wagon, and away we would go. Also in the summer, we would use the same way to go and get us some watermelons. And that was a memory by Vera Bermal. And there's a picture of Uncle D. He's at the threshing machine. And then the other picture is him and his wife, who would have been my Aunt Louise, Jack Marlowe's parents, on their wedding day in 1928. If you don't remember going and getting a Christmas tree, maybe you do remember shopping for Christmas in downtown Maquoketa.
Stampede City.
You can use your imagination to see what that would have been like. But this was in the December 20th, 1946 issue of the Jackson Sentinel. Shoppers swamp City, Stampede City. Christmas shopping spree swamps Maquoketa stores, and it's not over yet. Timber City Christmas shoppers took off on the wildest spending spree since pre-war days here this week, swamping Maquoketa stores and with elongated gift lists and making cash registers ring like sleigh bells. Although local merchants reported a decrease in the quantity of sales from last year's initial post-war rush, the average amount of the individual sales soared so much to greater heights than never before. Everyone on the buying side of the counters seemed to favor the higher priced merchandise offerings, and only an infrequent few appeared to indicate any objection to whatsoever to loosening their bankrolls considerably in an effort to please their gift recipients. A hat is something you just can't give a woman before she sees it. The fairer sex is almost universally wanting to pick out their hats for themselves. This picture was taken last Saturday night's rush at R.G. Mann's women's apparel store here, and shows Mrs. Mann in the process of fitting some cute headgear on a most willing customer. Her male escort to the left looks a little bored, as most men are in such situations. The rush hour dismay of Maquoketa's hard-working store clerks is pretty well characterized by the expression on the face of Mrs. George Goodnow, pictured in the center of the picture at left.
It's not the right picture.
These are out of order for some reason. This is what happens when you put these together at 3 o'clock in the morning on cold medicine. This was the first real Christmas shopping season after World War II ended. Everything was back in abundance as it had been before. People were tired of scrimping and having to make do. They were in a mood to splurge and celebrate. This picture is a 1958 North Bend School Christmas program photograph. As one of those children remembered, we always had a Christmas program complete with refreshments and presents, and most often a gift exchange as well. And the entire neighborhood was attended, including some other guests. And this was a memory. This picture is of North Bend dads at that Christmas party earlier than the one you just saw the picture of. And this was a memory from a different school by this guy, who I don't know if you will know, any of you. And of course, he was referring not just to his country school, but all country schools. Of course, that wasn't the only fun had at Fairfield number 1. And this is a picture of the school that he went to and my dad's entire family went to from 1910. Somewhere in there is my grandpa and his older brother Joe.
And which schoolhouse was that?
This is Fairfield number 1.
Was that right there on Anchorage Road?
No. That was, well, Roger, do you know where it was?
Wouldn't that been just down the road from our farm?
Yep. Yep.
About a mile off the highway before?
It was right at the driveway that went back into Marlowe's.
Yeah.
Roger unfortunately missed going to this school by half a mile, and he had to go to Fairfield Independent School,
Which is a higher class school.
It was because it had an indoor privy,
Yes.
which is why they didn't have school in the summertime. But speaking of the fun that Jack had at Fairfield number 1, I don't know if anybody can recognize anyone in this picture. The one that would be on my far left was Dylan Muggy Beck. The next one is Jack Marlowe, who had skis that he carried with him to school every day, all winter, and never skied once. The fourth one is Tommy Straub, and the last one is my dad. He still throws snowballs like that. Jack remembered that snowball fights were numerous, and they even had their own ski slope, apparently. The boys, which I just named up for you, but maybe you weren't a fan of snow, as many of us weren't, but you loved Christmas decorations. This is from the newspaper Maquoketa to Main Street in 1961. And just for comparison, this is the Christmas decorations from 1969. Can you see how they've changed? These decorations were lighted at night to make everything seem more festive. Of course, they didn't change very often. So from 1961, before they changed them and got different ones that look like this, it was 1978 when these came into being. So they changed about every 2 decades or so. But decorations were not the only delight of the Christmas season. Greetings from family and friends near and far help dissipate the cold of early winter. This greeting in particular, I'm sure, warmed the heart of Miss Elma Taylor of Spragueville in 1913. And I don't know if you can read that message. It says, "Well, hell, Elma, how are you?" And it does say hell, not hello. I am fine and doing well, I think. We are all going to leave for a Saturday. Ain't you married yet? It's about time, ha ha. Of course, some Christmases were colder than others. One event that everyone looked forward to, or feared, depending on if you were a kid or an adult, was the annual Christmas program. So this was December 1950, when the mercury plunged to near 20 below. And I know there are some of you in here that are looking forward to that. I have a psychiatrist's number for you if you wish. And then we have another memory of a Christmas program by this young lady. Anyone recognize her? Vivian Eckelberg Road, we called her country school days. Every Christmas we had a program. Talk about a case of nerves. It was really hard to stand up there alone and recite your poem or whatever. That's more of what this was her high school graduation picture. And those curtains must have been 100 years old. Pulling the curtains between the recitations was a really important job, but the audience, mostly our parents, could see right through the curtains, so it didn't hide much of the activity backstage. Now, if I have my pictures marked correctly, this is Louis Bud Eckelberg, who used to live in the Lone Pine neighborhood with his family. Lone Pine was another name for Fairfield number 1. He went to our church, which was the Spragueville Church, and always sat next to my great-grandfather, Jacob Beck, who grew up in Germany. And he remembered, I sat alongside of Jacob in church. And when it was time to sing, he'd poke me in the ribs and say, "Now sing!" Jacob and Lena, who both had very close ties to Germany, kept the German tradition of decorating a Christmas tree for the wild animals alive here. All the ornaments were edible and safe for the wildlife to eat. The trees were where the family could see them and be able to watch the animals and the birds enjoy the treats. This is a picture of the altar area at Salem Lutheran Church in Spragueville in the 1930s. Quite elaborate for that time, especially for a church. Church has always played a big role in the Christmas season. There was always a flurry of activity as the big day rolled near. The sanctuary of the church had to be decorated. The centerpiece, of course, there's a more contemporary picture of it decorated probably in the 1980s. The centerpiece, of course, was a Christmas tree. And all of the kids had to practice their parts and Bible verses for the Christmas program. This program from 1962 featured a very familiar face as the bee. And you may recognize this little girl. Anybody recognize her? If she was here, she would recognize her and be scolding me. That's Lori Evilsizer as the bee. Another task was and is shopping. Stores like Blessings, and this was on the south side of West Platte Street, numbers 119 through 121, which is currently the parking lot right across from the courthouse. Stocked all kinds of items just for the Christmas season. Special groceries were laid in for the season. Of course, some foods were only available at Christmas time, such as the perennial favorites. Anybody want to guess? Fruitcakes. And this one is from the Morning Glory Bakery, which I think Bonnie knows something about. Did you bake the fruitcakes?
I did, everyone.
Okay, and they're still around, right?
Yeah, they are.
Fruitcake was classified by my Grandpa Blair as a durable food. He said if a fruitcake was really done right, you could save it to shingle the roof in the summer. Another favorite was pineapple upside down cake. And what would Christmas be without Christmas cookies? Christmas candy is also a specialty, was and is. In the in the December 21st, 1923 edition of the Jackson Sentinel, Snow White Pharmacy advertised a fresh stock of Norris Christmas candies. While Stack and Luckish, and there's Snow White Pharmacy, Looks like a very profitable establishment, doesn't it? And I'm not going to vouch that this is 1923. Do you happen to know?
I think it's close.
It's close, yeah. Bonnie remembers a lot of the old buildings in town when they were new. And then Stack and Luckish, of course, were advertising Whitman's candy. Whitman's fine candies for $1.50 a pound. And as someone mentioned earlier, oysters have also been a favorite, mostly for oyster stew. Celebrations have always been a part of the holiday season. In December 1952, Mr. and Mrs. Ed Kirchhoff, on a wet and snow-flurried night, hosted a Christmas party on their lawn for more than 300 kids. I know it's a long shot. Was anybody happen to be there? Anybody remember that? No? Come on, people, it's only 1952. Candy, apples, and Cracker Jacks were handed out to the children, and Santa Claus even made a special appearance. Perhaps the Kirchhoffs wanted to spread Christmas cheer because of a Christmas 8 years earlier, which was the worst one of their lives. On December 6, 1944, the Kirchhoffs, seen here in their 40th anniversary picture, received bad news. Their son, Lieutenant James Kirchhoff, was reported missing in action on November 20th over Yugoslavia, which at the time was occupied by Nazi Germany. For weeks, right through Christmas, they agonized over the fate of their son. Finally, they got news. Their son, who had been hiding in Yugoslavia, was discovered by the Gestapo on December 27th and had been executed. I'm sure there are people here who remember when the news of this broke. Unfortunately, at the time, this is a picture from an earlier war. As in previous wars, losing loved ones in the military service was all too common, even at Christmas time. By the way, the other local man who was missing at the time was this gentleman. Of course, there were plenty of opportunities to be optimistic and have fun, even during the bad times. This is a group of Fairfield No. 3 students from 1942. If you look closely, can anyone identify the girl in the middle? Right there? She usually sits right there. Laura Williams. Yeah. And she says she actually remembers when that picture was taken, and I bet she probably does. So the girl, in case you were wondering, is Queen Laurel. One element of Christmas that has endured through time is, of course, anybody want to guess? Santa Claus. Based on the legend of St. Nicholas, a 3rd century figure also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker, whose persona has evolved into what is today a quintessential part of Christmas. This is a photo from 1976 of the Spragueville Legion. I do not know who the little girl in Santa's lap is, but she seems to be enthralled by him. So a quintessential part of Christmas is kids sitting on Santa's lap telling him what they want to find under the tree on Christmas morning. In the end, what makes Christmas special is not all the decorations, gifts, food, and etc. The heart of the holiday has always been friends and family. I don't think you probably recognize anyone in that picture. But in case you are curious, that's Dad, that's me, That's my sister, and that's Mother. That is someone we don't know. And this picture was taken, it was dated in 1964. Christmas seems to be the one time of the year when people take the time to reconnect with each other. For many, there are some relatives that they only see or hear from at this time of year. This is a photograph, reportedly, it's supposed to be of a local family in 1900. And I think if you look closely, that's Bonnie sitting in the background. And maybe Roger's hiding behind the tree, I can't. In and around it all, keep in mind how it all began. Now, back by special request, Joy, name that carol. So, this is something I've done before. It was requested by a couple of different people, not just Joy, although she's the one that paid me to put it in. Anyone want to guess what this title is? Jingle Bells. I'm not really sure what the pig has to do with it, but... Oh, there you go. You can tell this game is far above my intellectual level.
Yeah, see?
Oh, okay.
Did you see the all down here? Yeah. Keep in mind this was given to me. I did not draw these. It's Jack the Frost golfing a snowman.
Go tell it on the number.
Come on, ye faithful.
Yes, yes.
What child is it?
Noel.
And thank you for playing, and thank you for listening.